Look, I have to say I'm a bit overwhelmed. Today has been spectacular. If I think about some of the people that I miss most listening to around children and young people, it's the likes of Sue and Alistair and Sharon and Wendy. What a fantastic presentation. So I'm really delighted to be here. I know a couple of people around the room, but for those who don't know me, I work at the Institute of Child Protection Studies, which is at ACU. I understand D.B. Carr presented at the last forum, but the Institute's been around since 2005 and came out of the Barton Inquiry, which showed that kids in out-of-home care were at risk of a whole range of different forms of abuse and neglect. So one of the recommendations of the Barton Inquiry was that we needed to look at participation in fact agency of children and young people. So I was delighted in 2005, I was working at the Youth Co at the time, to come across to the Institute to do research directly with children and young people to find out about their lives and their experiences. And so one group that I've spent a bit of time with is young carers. Before I worked at the Youth Coalition in 1996, obviously I was incredibly young at the time. I helped set up the Sneaks Young Carers program at St Vinny's, and then went across to set up Cyclops with Anglicare, and sort of played around in the young carer space. I have to say to you, those who haven't worked with young carers before, if you decide to work with young carers, realise that you'll find them everywhere and you can never leave them. I've obviously left the state and am still talking about young carers in the ACT because they are an incredibly important group of kids who are often really quite hidden. A couple of years ago, I did a focus group. In fact, I think it was probably 97, 98. I did a focus group with young carers and said to them, I'm going to go and talk to adults about young carers and what you need. What are some of the things that I should tell them? And she said, make sure they tell them that we need help at school, or maybe tell them that we need a bit of a break. And there was one kid up the back, Michael, and Michael said, Tim, doesn't matter what you say as long as you start with a joke. So on Michael's advice, now people who might have heard me say will probably have heard this joke because I've flogged it to death. It's Michael's joke. I acknowledge Michael because I think it's the right thing to do when children contribute something, to acknowledge them. I also acknowledge Michael, so if it's a dud joke and you think that's really bad, it's Michael's joke, it's not mine. If you do laugh and think it's funny, then obviously it's the storyteller that... So there's a guy who decides, this is quite fortuitous that we're here, who decides that he's going to go and have a game of golf with his mate, Robert. So he calls Robert up on the phone, but instead of getting Robert on the phone, he gets Robert's 7-year-old daughter, Jessica. And the phone call goes a bit like this. Now, this is the embarrassing bit which Michael said that I had to do, so I'm going to start. Bring, bring! Bring, bring! Hello. Who's this? It's Jessica. Oh, hello, Jessica. I was wondering if your dad was there. Yes. Well, can I talk to him? No. Oh, okay. Is your mum there? Yes. Well, can I talk to her? No. All right then. Is anyone else there? Yes. Who? The police. The police? What are they doing? Looking for me. So today, obviously, thank you. I didn't give you permission to take that, by the way. If I say that on YouTube, I would not be happy at all. But obviously today we're about hearing hidden voices, listening to kids who often don't have much to say about their lives and don't often have opportunities to talk about the things that they want and need. So I'm going to talk a bit about young carers. Because it's been a little while since I've been in the ACT sector, I haven't got quite a sense as to how engaged you are with the young carers research and the like. So if I'm going really slow and talking about stuff that you already know, please feel free. I'm sure Erin and others will go like this and say move along. But if you think that I'm talking about something that you might not have come across before, please slow me down at the same time. So I do need to celebrate that it has been 20 years since we started working with young carers in Canberra. In fact, I would probably say that except for New South Wales, really Canberra with the ACT has been the lighting the shining light in regards to young carer work. I'll talk a little bit later about some of the international research that's been done and some of the indicators that would suggest a community is doing well in regards to young carers. And they talk about a level of awareness and a level of service provision, a level of legislation that's required for a healthy community for young carers. And I think we're doing quite well. However, a couple of weeks ago, Carers ACT asked me to come up and talk about young carers to the panel who's developing the carer strategy at the moment. And I was sort of reflecting on why it was important for government in particular, but for us as a community more broadly, to sort of think about young carers. And I was reminded of a situation that I came up against years ago. I was actually working at Anglicare at the time, the old Civic Youth Centre, if anyone remembers, that was in the heart of the city. And I was out the back, I think, putting the bins out or what have you, and I saw in the distance this young guy, Jason, I'll call him Jason. Now Jason was a young person that I'd known since he was about 5 years old, actually probably about 4 years old, because I used to also run a holiday camp program with St Vinny's, so people might know about that program for 6 to 12-year-olds. If you don't, call Vinny's and find out about it. Basically it's a respite program for kids who are doing a bit tough and a little bit of time out. And so Jason came along quite early on, but I think he snuck through. I think he was supposed to be 5, but at 4 he was snuck onto the list because no one could find him somewhere to go during the school holidays. So Jason was a little Aboriginal boy. One of those kids with that, that really huge, big smile with a toothy grin that could light up a room. And you're not supposed to have favourites, but Jason was one of my favourites because, he was an absolute ratbag. If there was trouble, you knew there was Jason. In fact, I was thinking about it before, for a while, was it Dr. Christopher Green had those books about positive parenting? Yeah. And there was one of his early ones was on ADHD and how to work with kids with ADHD. So I bought the book and I read it and I went, I'm going to know everything I need to know about ADHD because Jason's got ADHD. On the second night I was looking around for it and couldn't find it and discovered that it had actually been thrown into the bonfire by Jason, who was already sick of my strategy. So Jason was off in the distance. And I saw him, Jason! And he could see me and obviously hope recognised me. And, so both of us hurriedly walked towards each other and he with his massive big smile, me being absolutely chuffed that I saw him for the first time in ages. He was about 13 now. And he had this massive smile. And as I approached, all of a sudden his face dropped. And he burst into tears. I said, Jason, what's wrong? He goes, I'm so sorry, Tim. I said, what are you worried about? He goes, I didn't want to be another one of those, just really sorry. I said, tell me what's going on. He goes, I didn't want to be another one of those Aboriginal kids that was always, asking for stuff and couldn't stand it. I want to be deadly, I want to be strong, and I want to be able to cope. So, what's happened? He said, Mum we were in the refuge and stuff, and Mum started using, and so they kicked us out, and so we're on the streets and we've got no money and I asked people for money and I tried to beg and stuff, but no one gave me anything and I'm really scared about Mum and I don't know what to do and I'm really sorry. And I stopped and I thought, how the hell in the Canberra community have we got a child that feels so alone, that feels so responsible for his mum and his mum's care? How is it that we don't have a community of people saying, actually, I'm here for you, I'm here to support you? Jason is a young carer. I'll talk a little bit about him more later on. But he, like so many other children and young people in Canberra, care for someone who has an illness, a disability, a drug or alcohol or a mental health issue. Go to the next slide. Please. There's been a lot of conjecture about how many kids are taking on caring responsibilities, kids who are like Jason. But I suppose one of the most recent pieces of research that's come out, which I encourage you to look at, is the findings from the LSEC 2017 way, which found that about 40% of 14 to 15-year-olds identify having some kind of caring responsibility within their communities. These aren't just kids who are caring for a family member. A lot of the kids, when asked who they were caring for, said that they looked after their friend who might be a bit depressed. or that they might have someone down the street that they were checking every once in a while, an older person who needs a little bit of assistance. So 40% of kids identify that they have caring responsibilities, which is fantastic. We had the Maslow's hierarchy of needs up before. Maslow, before he died, had one of those light bulb moments I'm sure that you have as you're about to die. I'm going, oh my God, I got it wrong. So Maslow wrote a paper, I'm not sure that it was actually published, but he wrote a paper to say, actually, at the top of the hierarchy shouldn't be self-actualization, it should be altruism. It's about one of our most basic needs and important needs is giving back to others, to be altruistic and to care for others. So, it's delightful that 40% of children and young people in Australia in that cohort identified caring for other people. And I want to say right from the start that that's an incredibly positive, resilience-building thing, being able to care for someone that you care about. However, in the same survey, they found that about 1 in 10, 14 and 15-year-olds were taking on significant amounts of care. So maybe 40 plus hours of care a week. And that they were often doing it with little or no support. Obviously this cohort is 14 to 15-year-olds, which is a little bit outside of your remit, but we know that most young carers who start caring do so around 8 or 9 years of age. So we're picking up kids a lot earlier. In fact, one of the first young carers that I ever met, I think I talked to Erin about it many years ago, was a young carer whose mum had a mental health issue and a drug and alcohol problem. And her older brother, who I was talking to, was 11. She was 6, I think. And whenever mum was psychotic, the 11-year-old would jump on her and restrain her, and she would jump on mum, and she would call the ambulance. So kids are taking on a whole range of responsibilities really early on. And we need to identify them in the middle years so that the impacts won't be lifelong, and that they're basically getting the support that they need when they need it most. I won't go through all that detail, except to say that 22% of those that were assuming considerable amounts of care were spending more than 2 hours a day on these care activities, with a smaller group, about 5%, as I said, spending more than 40 hours a week on their caring responsibilities. So there's a lot of stuff that's written about young carers and some of their needs. People might be interested that the national studies that have been done have shown that the typical young carer is female, although we're seeing more and more boys taking on caring responsibilities, particularly later in life. Most of them live in single parent families, so we know lots of young carers are caring for a single parent, and most often a single parent who's a mother. I remember, again, this young carer on one of our first young carer camps said, my dad just couldn't cope, so he left and left me to look after mum by myself. And this is a 9-year-old who said that dad didn't have the emotional capacity to look after his sick wife, which meant that he was now responsible for care. We know that a lot of young carers live in disadvantaged communities in out-of-urban locations, lots of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander and non-English speaking. Now, in regards to Indigenous young carers, I think one of the biggest problems in being able to identify these kids and get support for them is that a lot of those kids don't identify as being young caring. This whole caring notion is a bit weird. In fact, it's quite weird in Aboriginal communities more broadly, and I would say amongst the broader carer population too, but this idea that one person cares for another person, and it's not reciprocal. In fact, kids get pretty pissed off, I have to say, when you start to talk about parentification and all these words that are often used to describe these kids, because I go, that sort of assumes that I'm not being loved and cared for and supported by mum. She sometimes can't look after me in the way that she'd like to, but that doesn't mean that she doesn't give me something when I need it. So it's a problem for lots of communities, but in particular Indigenous and culturally linguistically diverse groups, because the whole community cares, and that's kind of what we're looking for, that, a lot of people are caring for a lot of people, and you're creating this interdependent kind of community that's so important. That's not to say that the impacts aren't there for a lot of these kids, but unpacking it can be quite difficult. In regards to some of the impacts that caring can have on children and young people's lives, there's been a lot of studies looking about how kids see themselves. And it goes both ways. A lot of children, young people have great pride in the fact that they can care for someone they care about. You know, kids who really excel because they want to be the best that they can be and to make mum or dad proud. So kids say that it can be really positive, but a lot of other kids feel quite entrenched in their caring role. You know, we talk to young carers, particularly those that are transitioning out of care, who've decided they can't care anymore, or that they're going to go and live with another family member or go to uni or what have you. A lot of kids talk about this massive grief or this massive sense of guilt and shame of going, I can't do this anymore. People might know I was president of Carers Australia for some time, and the reason why I took on that role was because my sister has schizophrenia, and I spent a couple of years being her main carer. And 3 years ago I left Canberra to move down to Melbourne to see whether or not I could stand on my own feet, 2 feet outside of the ACT Community Centre. I'm doing okay. Today's my a bit of a hit, so I can, you know, go back and feel better about myself in life. But, you know, as in moving to Melbourne, I was really torn. You know, can I leave this part of myself here? Will other people take up the slack? Can I see myself outside of this caring role within my family? A lot of these kids say that it's really difficult for them to move on because they don't necessarily have other opportunities to excel for other people to recognise what they're contributing. A lot of these kids said, you know, I remember one boy who I spoke to only probably 2 years ago, who said, you know, I never ever got an A at school. I was never in the basketball team. All I was my mum's carer. So when I had to give it up, I was giving everything up. You know, so a lot of these kids, we talk about, you know, social connectedness and social capital and being part of communities. A lot of the young carers that we met are incredibly socially isolated. One of the girls on one of our first camps said a couple of years ago, she said, when I got upset, I couldn't cry in front of my dad because I didn't want him to feel guilty. I couldn't cry in front of my mum because I didn't want her to worry. So I cried in my room and my dog licked my face. You know, so this overwhelming sense of isolation that some of these kids have. When they're not able to go to school, or if they go to school, they can't tell people about their experiences, or they feel ashamed. And you know, this total sense of being alone is quite significant for a lot of the kids we're talking about. Physical health. A lot of kids who are taking on fairly significant caring responsibility. Sometimes it does take the toll on their health. I did some focus groups for the Commonwealth Minister a couple of years ago to set up the Young Carer Bursary program. And I remember talking to one young man who, he and his dad lived in the ABC flats. They're still around, aren't they? I think, excellent. So his biggest concern at the time, so it might have been a little bit before that, was about accommodation for he and his dad, because he had literally had to carry dad up and down the steps each day because there wasn't support for him to do that. So the physical toll on him was quite significant. As is the emotional toll for lots of kids. A lot of kids say that they find it quite depressing and quite difficult, particularly when they can't engage with friends and school and the like. One of the things that has come up more recently is, we talked about the impact on education for a significant amount of time. We talked about the fact that lots of kids can't get to school because they're having to care at home and things can be chaotic, so they get to school late, or when they get to school they find it difficult to concentrate. I remember one young person talking about sitting in class, and every time he heard an ambulance or a siren go off, he just had an absolute freak out thinking, mum's not well, I need to get home. And he said it was really hard because often he'd fire up and throw a desk and run out, and everyone thought that he had behavioural issues, and that it was being a problem child, and really it was because he was so afraid that things weren't going okay with him. So we know that a lot of kids find it difficult to attend school. We also know now that a lot of kids don't achieve to the extent that they could elsewhere. LSAT found that most young people who've got caring responsibilities are between 1 and 3 years behind in regards to their education. And this actually starts at primary school. So we're seeing lots of kids who are finding it very difficult to achieve. All right. think of this one. Oh, so these are some quotes from children and young people that have been involved in some of the studies. I'm happy to pass on some of them to you, but maybe just click your way through all of them. It's changed my life, sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a bad way, but it's definitely changed. I remember there was one kid on campus a couple of years ago. He said, oh, you know, it was a young girl. She said, you know, my little brother, he's like, he's really annoying, but then I look at other kids' brothers, and they're even more annoying, so I'm really glad that he is how he is. So, this thing of the kids kind of see sometimes the positives in that too. Another young boy, Ben, was a bit of a favourite again of mine, said, oh, you know, I'm really lucky that I'm a young carer because I learned how to cook and clean and stuff, and girls dig that sort of kind of stuff. So he thought he was all ready for a relationship because he knew how to care. But as you can see, there's some other quotes from kids that aren't as positive. This is a study that, again, we're bearing on around kids that have parents with drug and alcohol issue. When mum was using, I didn't brush my teeth and stuff. I was practically not eating. I was sick and skinny out. This is a young carer on a camp who said not once, she was talking about the fact that all these people used to come into her house to look after her mum, but not once had anyone of them asked how she was going. So it was always about, how's your mum going? Is she doing okay? And she said, I just want someone to ask me if I'm going okay. I don't, that was the quote that I had before. I don't cry in front of my parents or friends, I cry on my pillow, I cry with my dog and some days. This is an example of a young person who's offered respite. He said, there's no way, there's no point. How can I go away on respite if there's no one to care for mum? Plus if I go, I'll be stressing the whole time. And when I get home, mum will be stressed, I'll be stressed and things will have been worse than before. I don't want you to tell, a couple of years ago there was a young carer summit at the Parliament House, and Jenny Macklin was minister at the time, and she and the MC of the summit kept kind of did this Oprah thing where she was saying, oh, I just wanted to recognise Jeremy from South Australia. Jeremy's an amazing man, you know, who stuck to his school and still has time to look after his little sister. And everyone was clapping, it was fantastic. And then she said, oh, and here's Maria from Victoria, you know, she is a young carer for two of her brothers and her mum who is dying of cancer, and still she's able to, you know, participate in her hockey team where she's doing really well. And I apologise for my language, the young woman got up and said, get fucked. She said, I don't want everyone to clap me. I want you to tell me how you're going to make my life better. I want you to tell me how you're going to help my mum so that she doesn't have to rely on me. I want you to tell me about how you're going to change things for other young carers because this isn't okay. We don't want to be heroes. We don't want people to applaud and say, wow, you're a fantastic young person. At the same time, we don't want to be seen as victims. You know, because that's not who we are. We want to be seen as kids who are pretty normal, living in sort of abnormal situations. But we want to be people who are seen as not needing help, but where help is actually provided because we see caring as a community responsibility rather than responsibility of the individual. I think I've got a clip now.
What was the response to that?
The minister was dumbfounded. It was political. But it was interesting because as a result of that, the summit, they then worked with a group of young carers to develop some recommendations and were responsible to them. Unfortunately, there was a change of government and things went awry. In saying that, the Commonwealth lives under Tony Abbott, actually quite engaged with the young carer issue and invested quite a lot of money in, say, these young carer advisory programs, which I think are great, but again, don't look at some of the causes of young caring. Don't say, okay, how can we mobilise communities to support families who are doing it tough? Instead, we'll give kids $3,000 to improve their educational outcomes. And a lot of kids go, well, I can't get to school, so you know, I'm sitting at home with my $3,000 going, this is lovely, but I can't spend it. So, yes, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So this is Courtney. She's a young carer that spoke to Tony Abbott, but a whole range of others as well about her caring story. I was a bit in two minds about sharing it because it is a bit emotional, but I did meet with some young carers just last week and they said actually you know, people need to see how something can actually be. So this is Courtney's story.
When I was little, I remember my friends hadn't seen Mum in a wheelchair, so it's really bad, but I remember being really embarrassed because wheelchairs were for like old people and sick people, and to show everyone that my mum was in a wheelchair kind of, to me, it said my mum's really sick. When I was little and Mum had first been diagnosed, I had no idea what it was. It's not something that you know a lot about. So Mum was in hospital and she got told that she'd never walk again. And only being allowed to see my mum in a hospital, so it was really scary. With MS, it's very uncertain. You never know what's around the corner. My dad left when we were little, so Mum was our only support, and we needed to support her. So the roles are kind of reversed. We became the parents and Mum became the child. We were very fortunate that we got carers to come assist because an 8 and 3-year-old can't cook. We were stuck looking after Mum at her worst when they couldn't be here, so they did night shift. So yeah, she was looked after during the day, but when it came to night time, no one was there except for us. So we had to learn from very early on how to help support her, and we had to grow up very fast. As I got to learn more about Mum's illness and ways we could work on it together, she was very determined. She got told that she'd never be able to walk again, and I kind of get the stubbornness from her, so she proved them wrong, and she went from a wheelchair to a walking frame, and then from that to crutches, and then a walking stick, and now she's most of the time able to not need that. So seeing Mum's strength to do that gives me strength to know that I can do anything I want to do. As well as being a student and a carer, I also work at the local cinemas. I'm most passionate about movies. I love making movies, I love watching movies, I love editing movies, I love critiquing movies, anything to do with movies. With performing, you get to take on a new character and get to create their world, and it's nice to be able to play someone else and experience their life in their shoes, in that character. It's just nice to have a break and not be bombarded with like what's going on at home. Being 17 and being a carer, it's very different to being like any other teenager. Whether I'm at work or I'm at school or out with my friends or doing whatever I'm doing, I'm constantly looking after my mum, whether it's calling her, messaging her, making sure she's okay, if she needs anything. When I'm home, making sure everything's okay, helping her around the house, just spending time with her. And my brother and I do have some fun, so when she loses her sight, we go, how many fingers am I holding up? And it's just our way of getting rid of like the whole dark look on the illness and just making light. And that's our family quality time when she's sick. I think that it's really important that there's awareness for parents, young or old. People need to know that it's not a death sentence and it's not the end of a family, and just to have more appreciation and understanding for people who each carry roles. We're just like any other family, just with something added that adds to our experience as a family. Hi, my name is Courtney, I am 17 and I'm a young carer for my mum who has MS.
That's a pretty powerful clip. Have you got any responses to it, or are there any things that what would be the key messages you think coming out of Courtney's story? Are you struck by anything, or surprised, or actually that's an important point?
I suppose the reality that, people can be around during the day, but who's there at night? That really was very poignant, and that's the same for a lot of people that we come across too. It's like we can be there 9 to 5 or X number of hours, but it's something maybe with time.
I think the reciprocity about the strength side of things, because Mum would have been looking at her daughter, thinking how strong she was, but equally it's the feedback of seeing Mum really working hard.
Yeah.
It's really moving.
Thought the impartial reality to Courtney on the wheelchair.
So, on my first camp in 1997, when we first these little rat bags away, we had 22 young carers and 12 staff. It was a partnership between carers, basically, Mary and CB. The 5 things, we spent some time talking to kids about things they needed the most, and the 5 things that were highlighted by them 20 years ago was more recognition, more support for the families, more help with education, more individualised support, and better collaboration. When I said before, there's lots to celebrate, in regards to the progress we've made over 20 years. I have to say, almost to the word, these are the 5 recommendations that were made in the most recent Young Carer report in Australia too. That lots of kids feel like they're still alone, and that people don't understand them or their situation. I smiled to myself when I saw Wendy's name on the agenda coming from Macquarie, because as I shared with Wendy before, I spent quite a bit of time at Macquarie School. In fact, there was one young carer, I think he's okay saying his name, Kyle, who went to Macquarie. And Kyle came to a program that we ran at the Junction Youth Health Service in the early days. His mum had a serious drug problem. And he said, "Can you come to my school and come to my class and explain to people what's going on in my family, because I'm really shy and sometimes I get really angry and no one wants to be my friend because they think that I'm just an angry boy, and I need them to know that maybe stuff's a bit tough for me, and that I can't say it myself, I don't know how to say it myself, and I want people to know that I do care and that I want to be their friends, and that I'll try my hardest if they promise that they can try a little bit harder too." So we went to Macquarie and went to we spoke to the principal and spent a bit of time with the teachers talking about how we best do it, and we sat with the kids and talked to them about caring and how that could go on. We decided, Kyle and I, that we wouldn't disclose straight away, that we'd see how people were going, and so we started talking about it, and then the kids really engaged with this idea that sometimes people have to help their family members, and Kyle just blurted out, "Oh, I'm a young carer, it's me!" Because it was then something to be proud of and something to be recognised for. Interestingly, there were 4 other kids in that class who said, "Actually, I'm a young carer too." So this thing, the kids need to be recognised and they need to have some awareness, and we as service providers, we as people who work with children and young people, need to realise that actually there's a lot of these kids out there. If we're going with 1 in 10 kids, and there's 2 or 3 in every classroom, 2 or 3 in our youth centres, in our drop-in centres and the like. I talked about Jason before, and when Alistair and I did the review into the Bimbri justice system, I'm getting a little emotional, a couple of years ago, we went to the ANC to talk to some of the kids who transitioned, and there was Jason, because he dropped out of the system. He didn't have those people around him who were supporting him and encouraging him and seeing the best that he was. This was a beautiful kid who we let down. So in recognising kids, we need to recognise the strengths that they have, but also need to recognise that they are parts of our community and that they need to be supported and encouraged to be the best that they can be. speaking to a young carer named Becky Red a few years ago, and she said every young carer needs someone to fight as hard for them as they fight for the person they love. You know, we need to be those champions, we need to be those fighters for those kids, so that kids like Jason don't end up at AMC. Sorry, downer. I didn't think I'd respond that way, but the other thing is, you know, support for families, I think, is crucial. Kids have told us that it's nice to have support groups, and it's nice to have opportunities to build their skills as young carers, but what they most want is for the person they're caring for to be okay. They want someone to come in and check on them. They want someone to alleviate some of the responsibility. They need help with education. They want some individualised support, and they want to be able to collaborate with others. I've got way too many more slides, but what I might do in the last couple of minutes, if it's okay, is to ask Luke to come up and talk a little bit about what Carers ACT is doing and what other sorts of supports are available for young carers too, and then you might have some questions.
Thanks, Tim. So I guess I'll be really, really short and sweet, and I guess bring back all your knowledge to a local level for the ACT. So I guess what Tim's spoke about. So nationally, we're looking at 270,000 young carers, so that's under the age of 25 in Australia, which sort of equates to about 4,500 in the ACT. Another 1,000 in the surrounding regions. That might be kids that live in Yass, Braidwood, that would access Canberra regularly. At Carers ACT, we've got 700 registered young carers under the age of 25. 160 of these are under the age of 12, so the focus of what we've been talking with today. Is that time on the read? 30 of those, which was an alarming stat that I looked at this week, are the primary carer. So 30 kids under the age of 12 are the main carer in the household. We're working with some other good services to support these kids too. So Anglicare, there's Joe from Cyclops, so we work really, really closely to make sure that we're covering all bases, as well as the St Nick's program as well. But our main focus is education at Carers ACT, so just supporting kids to be able to do things that other kids do, like go on school camps, go on excursions, putting in some support at home so they feel better about going away from home for a couple of days, if that's a school camp. There are also often kids that have got a heap going on at home, so it's not easy for mum to sit down and do their homework with them, so tuition is a really, really big thing. But as well as helping the young carer with education, we're working really, really hard to work with schools and community so we can identify and support young carers. So I've got a stack of these little cards, so please take some off me. Take them wherever you go. You can identify a young carer. Good. Short and sweet.
So just very briefly, in regards to some of the way forward, there's been a number of young carer forums internationally. I was very fortunate, I didn't get to go to Spain, but I went to Malmö in Sweden earlier in the year. And one of the key things that came out of it was a need to do collaboration, but for that to be codified in a particular way. So I'll finish by giving you the same call that I did to the mob who was looking at the care charter. So we need to legislate in some ways. We need to recognise that young carers exist in the UK. They have no legislation that any disability, drug or alcohol, mental health service identifies that someone is needing support from a child or young person. That child or young person automatically gets an assessment, and they're linked up with education with their own child and youth service, and a support plan is developed around that family to enable that family to be able to meet the child's needs. Scotland has done a similar thing. Sweden, they've moved a little bit further and are saying they'll actually require local authorities to report on the number of young carers who are receiving support from those services, and how they've enacted that plan in action. So I'm not necessarily suggesting that we want to be doing a whole lot more surveillance on these families, but I would be arguing that we as a community need to start saying, okay, how do we find those kids like Jason? How do we as a community, wrap supports and services, how do we pull in schools, how do we deal with child protection, how do we support child welfare organisations to engage in a positive way and ensure that these kids are getting the needs that they need. So I've been joking a little bit about young carers and how they keep following me around and how I follow them around. They are pretty amazing young people, and I echo the voice of others in saying, listen, if you sit down with children and young people in these situations, they will come up with some exciting ideas as to how they want to be supported. Don't be afraid of them. Realise that they need assistance and that you can be that champion that's fighting for them. So thank you very much.